Hey folks, happy Tuesday. I hope that this finds you well and that you all have had a nice weekend and that you didn't get blown over. It is quite unpleasant and quite, quite windy out there. So, I hope you're all doing all right and stayed with your feet to the ground this weekend. As you can see here, I have a little bit of a transition, and I was looking and, I was going through the articles in Handling the Hard Stuff, and some of them work really well, obviously, for our discussion on identity, and I encourage you all to check them out. But I kept returning to this article that I discuss in my Belief in Reality class that might piggyback a little bit better off of our conversation that we started last week. It's called I Am John's Brain. Because part of the discussion we had in class and then part of the discussion that I encouraged kind of in the video lectures from last week is like thinking about this difference between the mind and the brain. And if there is a difference at all, and if there is, like where is identity located? Like where are we, if anywhere, located? Okay? And this little article does a really nice job, I think, kind of allowing us to ask some really interesting questions. And so, as you can see listed here, you have a copy to the PDF. It's one of the links. Also, you can see a video that I recorded for my Belief in Reality class about this particular video. And then there's a really cool TED Talk there about kind of consciousness, the brain, and, our perception of the world as it relates to our engagement with it, and as it relates to our identity stemming from it. Okay, so that's what today is going to be discussing, is this notion of like, where and what does our brain do? What can it do? What are we aware of it doing? Which, in a weird way, we're not aware of it doing much, right? And if we think that, the mind exists, well, again, where is the mind? Okay. And so the second video, or the video below this, will kind of dive more in particular about the lecture itself. So please kind of pull that up and read along as I go through it. And I mean, think about this in terms like of our and for our purposes here. Because part of where we're going to go on Thursday is asking that question, well, who are we when we consume alcohol, right? Do we fundamentally change, and if so, how? Does consuming alcohol bring about, a different side of us? Does it bring about the same side, but we don't usually have access to? So there's, there's lots of good questions that we can actually ask as it relates to the effect that alcohol has on our identity, metaphysically speaking. We can also ask, I think, really interesting questions as it relates to, ethanol, like the chemical component that makes alcohol, ethanol, right? Like the way that affects our brain, okay? So if there is some sort of connection here between, clearly recognizing the fact that alcohol changes our physiology, it affects our brain, and it affects various other kind of aspects of our physiology. And if that is the case, right, then again, what can we have access to, or do we just feel its effects? Are we just relegated to the effects, etc.? So enjoy the article for today, and we'll pick up with a discussion on kind of the effects of alcohol and the effects of alcohol and the way that it affects kind of brain chemistry and our ability to make decisions. And on Thursday, some of the video lectures are going to be general and more broad in scope, but then I also will do kind of a overview here to help facilitate our discussion from page 55 in Handling the Hard Stuff. So look for those videos on Thursday, where this title is about like a dynamic model of the will, which the will is defined by the faculty by which a person decides or initiates action, also known as like willpower, control or restraint deliberately exerted, desire or intention, right? But as it relates to alcohol intoxicated behavior. So we'll see that a little bit more, again, practically from this article on Thursday. And that's where we're going to kind of keep rolling with the conversation. So I look forward to investigating this week with y'all. Cheers.